I mean, our view, above 125, it gets more interesting. Kind of 150, even more interesting, and then 175, very interesting. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about it from the scale. I mean, what happened last Thursday was less about kind of the level of yield, but more what happened in the market itself, right? The market really had a whiff of. At the same time, it had a big dislocation in the curve. And so there's been lots of talk about the 7-year auction and how that tailed, and quite frankly, how worrisome that was. The 20-year part of the curve, Treasury curve, is also very interesting. So to me, maybe it's not so much about the overall level of interest rates, but really the dislocations across Treasuries themselves.
Within that, we go back to basics, Greg Peters, and there's an idea of the nominal yield, the regular yield, the 1.44% yield, folks. And around that, the dynamics of inflation and what's called the residual, which is the real yield. It's a show on Bloomberg TV. Greg Peters, which matters right now? The inflation dynamics or the residual, the real yield?
I think the real yield matters more here. As well actually acts as a primary constraint around the I think, and borrowing. And so you've seen this real move in inflation, right? So inflation was clearly too low in March of last year. It was absolutely. So I'm kind of on the other side of inflation continuing to rise.
Report which he was saying that even 10-year Treasury yields could go up. Greg, are you on that side of things, that we could see an actual rally that is pretty significant in Treasuries, or are you just saying that perhaps it's gotten a little ahead of itself in terms of the sell-off?
Well, so I'm not willing to say negative at this point. I mean, let's get below 1%. So I think that's somewhat heroic, but I think
the advantage of those bursts of volatility in the future, Greg. Can you walk me through how you approached things last week and how you approach things in the future? Do you expect to see that again?
Well, quite frankly, it's tricky, though, because the market and dislocation in the Treasury market, which is the most liquid market in the world, is where you continue to see real liquidity in times of stress with cash. So I do think, though, if you get these gaps in trading, kind of these vacuum moves, which we didn't really see, that will create opportunity, because I think the whole world on the buy side is waiting for credit to cheapen up, because the strength of the economy.
Senior portfolio manager didn't say whether he was buying Tom Keane at the long end, poking around.
That's what they do. Yeah, poking around. That's CFA talk. Come on, John.
Come on, I mean,
Is that buying?
Greg,
They're not allowed to say. The general counsel will, put him in the timeout chair. The PGIM timeout chair. He's out there saying buyer. So I do want to point out, he does mention the real yield, folks. That's not the statistic. USGGT. Yeah.
Real yield 2 days earlier. What have you done? I always do the same thing. What have you done?
he's poking around.
Corpus Christi, Texas, thank you for listening. They don't agree with their government. Just one opinion, John. Corpus Christi says no. Politics over.
On any support, so it needs all 50 Democrats on board. It's President Biden's first major setback in filling his cabinet in American progress for almost a decade. And in the UK, after the Exchequer Richard Sunak to extend further payments to workers through September, that will protect millions of people whose jobs have been suspended during the coronavirus pandemic. The British government will keep paying 80% of wages for those in the programme through June. That allowance will decline over the following 3 months. The Tokyo Olympics organisers say a decision will be made by March 25th whether to allow overseas spectators. They'll decide whether there will be limits on Japanese fans in April. Earlier, the newspaper reported that foreign spectators would be banned from the games. Well, we use 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than...
país, igual que los demás países del mundo, no está preparado para esta pandemia. Más aún, los más afectados son los países menores como el nuestro, ¿no?
Women leaders were actually better at controlling the deaths from COVID-19. Do you think out of this pandemic, we'll see more countries be willing to elect female leaders?
When we look at women leaders, we tend to project on them baggage that they shouldn't bear.
Women are given an opportunity when no one else wants to do the job.
Women had a very clear objective. They wanted to save lives.
So women leaders, if you look at their careers, have also built up a level of trust.
In fact, women have to be better at communication in order to be elected as leaders, whereas this doesn't hold true for men.
We need to get those sexist stereotypes out of our head and give women a fair run to leadership.
Trying to change the stereotypes about women is not only the business of women, but men have to be part of it.
ESO Now is your online home for brand new Boston.
And from Massachusetts, speaking to Kevin Cirilli in the last 24 hours. More from Kevin in just a moment. From New York City this morning, good morning. Alongside Tom Keane, Lisa Grandis, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Live on TV and radio, up 22 on the S&P 500. We advanced 5.6%. Just south of 3,900. The ADP report comes in about an hour from now. Then it's claims tomorrow and onto payrolls this Friday. In the bond market, Tom, just to wrap things up for you, curve a bit steeper, 2s out to 10s, yields higher on a 10-year by 5 basis points. 144 is your yield right now.
John, small caps lead out. Russell 2000, 1.1% there is, well, I call it churn, folks, but within the range of the tumult of the last 10, 20 days. Victory lap for Kevin Cirilli, a smart interview with the progressive of the moment, the senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. What was the biggest surprise, Kevin? Let me cut to the distinction you saw in the senator's comments.
Two things. First and foremost, the space that is between Secretary Yellen and Senator Warren, and that's only going to be continued to be explored both in the financial services press, but also as we inch forward and beyond President Biden's first 100 days. Then secondly, there's a co-sponsor that we've all spoken to, Congressman Brendan Boyle. He represents suburban Philadelphia. He is seen in many ways as a moderate Democrat. He's a co-sponsor of this bill. Pennsylvania, battleground state, so there's political long-term implications, but also, again, it speaks to this broader point about how her ideology is now really shaping suburban congressional districts in a way that 10 years, or in 2013, her first year in office, we didn't see.
I want to dovetail Senator Warren's comments with the reality of seen in Greg Vallier's notes this morning, which is the battle of 2021 is the redistricting. You talk about Pennsylvania, your Pennsylvania, Kevin. It's really always legal, always bitter, a battle. Can the Democrats lose the House just off of redistricting?
Well, they will say that redistricting poses a significant opportunity for Republicans. Republicans would take issue with that and say that it's because typically the mood of the country and the pendulum, the political pendulum, swings back and forth after a couple of years into someone's first term.
One thing that was really clear to me about Senator Warren's interview with you, Kevin, was the increasing gap between the Biden administration and what they're trying to do and the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And I'm wondering how much this fissure is going to jeopardize Biden's plans, both with infrastructure spending and some of the other provisions that he's talked about.
You know, it serves as a check and a balance because they lost the progressives lost the minimum wage debate, and were likely on $15.